Hi, let's kick things off by talking about something fundamental in programming world, which are compiler and interpreters. I know it might sound like intimidating terms, but trust me, they're pretty cool once we break them down. So you can see like how things are implemented, and you can actually do that. You can actually implement one very effectively. Um, Basically, these are tools that help us convert the code we write into something a computer can actually understand and run. So in this video, we'll explore how they work, the differences, why they're such a big deal, and all the details. So let's dive in. So let's get into what compiler and interpreter actually do. Think of a compiler like a translator who reads your entire novel, makes sure there are no mistakes, and then turns the whole thing into a new language all at once. What it translates in encoding is going to be like it takes your whole code, checks for errors, and produce a complete executable file that actually your computer can run. Now, an interpreter is a little different. It's like someone reading your novel out loud, translating it like sentence by sentence. It still checks for errors, but instead of creating a single executable file, it executes code like piece by piece, like line by line. So what's the catch? Basically, for an interpreter, you need an interpreter to be around. So whether you're using a compiler or an interpreter, the journey from your code to something a computer can understand and execute, it's kind of same. There are two major phases we're gonna focus on in this video, which are lexical analysis and parsing. Lexical analysis is like breaking your code into like bite-sized pieces, which we call them tokens. So basically, we want to break it down into like a stream of tokens, and these tokens are like a building block of your programs. And everything is going to be break down into smaller, meaningful elements, which again I just mentioned that we call them tokens. And parsing comes next, which is all about making sure those stream of tokens generated by lexical analysis phase followed all the rules and basically they are the way they are supposed to. And now they are ready to be executed by whatever programming language or machine that you're using. So now let's zoom in on the first phase, which is the lexical analysis, or we also call it lexing. So when you hear lexing, that means the whole process of lexical analysis phase. So imagine you're writing a sentence and someone breaks it down into like individual words, like identifying nouns, verbs, punctuations. So that's exactly what the lexing does to your code. It has two steps. First, a scanning, in which we just go through all characters in your code to find like a meaningful sequences, and then we tokenize them, where we actually label all those sequences. Like if we find something meaningful, we basically label them and we just organize them as we go over the line. So for example, here that we have an example. So basically, if the line is like this, num equal to 10, we just scan it, we identify the line, what elements it has, and then we start tokenizing it, which basically we just we label it into meaningful tokens. Like for example, so we recognize this is a variable name, this is an assignment operator, this is an integer value, and at the end we have a semicolon. So now we have a stream of tokens from this line, And that's what the Lexing does. So it understands it and it creates meaningful elements or tokens from the line of your code. Now that comes parsing, which is the second phase. Basically, we take those tokens generated by Lexing phase and we arrange them in a way that makes sense according to the rules of whatever programming languages that we're using. The main goal is to create a structured representation of your code here. Okay, so for example, for this line, after we analyze all the tokens and make sure it is actually following all the rules and they're meaningful and there's no error in them, so basically we're going to end up with generating like a meaningful list, which actually now is ready to be executed by the next phase, whatever that is. If it's interpreter, we need to run things line by line. If it's a compiler, we need to, convert everything into another language, like another executable file, all at once. So let's quickly recap the two key phases we've talked about: lexical analysis and parsing. Lexical analysis is where we break the source code into tokens. And then parsing actually steps in to arrange those tokens and ensure they follow the programming language's rules. Together, these two steps are like the first draft of translating your code into something a machine can execute, either line by line or just make everything ready and just execute everything into like another language, which that's what the compiler does. So these are the things all compilers and interpreters do in general. And for our assignment, we also need to learn how to write codes for doing lexing and also parsing, which I'm going to show you simple code that actually reads a line of a code. And since we're creating an interpreter, we need to do lexing on each line and then do parsing on each line and finally execute that line.